Good morning, everybody. 9:30 sharp. My clock is just chiming. So it's great to have you here. My name is Peter Johnson. I volunteer with Jobcare. I'm the volunteering manager, and I'm going to be our host this morning. So welcome to the final episode in Jobcare's Friday morning autumn series. And I'm hoping that today's episode, today's webinar, will really be helpful to you. Just let you know a little bit about Jobcare. We're a very small not-for-profit in Dublin city centre, and our only mission is to help unemployed people find work. Everything we do and offer is free, and that's thanks to the support from individuals and organisations in Dublin to help us just to fund the different things that we do and to provide anything that we can provide for you to help you get back to work free of charge. The theme for this morning is changing your career. And I know from talking to a lot of people over the last year that are unemployed, that they have been doing quite a bit of rethinking that has given them the opportunity, in a sense, to rethink their own career direction. We've also met a lot of people who have been out of the workforce for a long period of time, maybe raising a family, a long gap, and they're trying to rethink, how can I get back into the workforce and what should I do? I'll be introducing 4 people today who have made very significant career changes. I'll be introducing a person who was in the bank, unemployed, and then decided to start their own business. I'm going to introduce somebody who has been a 10 years long-term mum and has got back into the workforce, interested to hear her story. Somebody who has been a plumber and moved into tech, and somebody who is in the defense forces and moved into tech. So hopefully you'll be able to identify at least one of those people and pick up some advice, encouragement in your direction as you consider changing career. The questions that I'm going to ask, I've thought of them in advance. I hope they're the type of questions you would ask if you were sitting in the room with these 4 people. But also at the end, there'll be an opportunity for you to ask questions. And there's a chat feature on Zoom. Pop those questions into chat, and at the end of the session, I'll do my best to ask some of those to our panelists. The session will be recorded, just letting you know, but you won't appear on the recording. If you're really worried, just feel free to turn off your video. If you ask a question at the end, I'll only mention your first name and won't identify you. So let's get going. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to introduce Morgan O'Connell. Morgan O'Connell is an executive and career development coach who's been working with us for at least the last 5 years. And I know over those 5 years, Morgan has met with and supported a lot of different people as they navigated their career change. So I've just asked Morgan just to begin the session here with a few slides and a little bit of input on his own perspective of career change. So Morgan, thanks a lot for coming along today. And
thanks,
I'm going to hand over to you.
Fantastic. Can everyone hear me? Yes, fantastic. I can hear myself anyway. So I think I have about 10 minutes, and it's a good job that I'm from Cork because we speak very fast in Cork. So 10 minutes will be, hopefully I'll get through it. I've got a few slides, some advice, but also my own journey and my own path, because it's, as I was thinking about it last night, it's a long and winding road, which is the case for a lot of people. So I'll fill you in as I go along, a few slides, but nothing too major. Okay, so let me just share that. Can everyone see that? Brilliant. Now, okay, so I'll start with what I was doing, I suppose, and I have currently what I'm doing currently and what I was doing. So I came out of college. I'm currently a career coach, a financial coach, a financial planner. I'm self-employed, and this is my second stint at being self-employed. I came out of college as a hotel manager, and I spent 10 years managing hotels, nightclubs, restaurants here in New York, and around the country. I made a huge change from that into self-employment, in, I'm not going to tell you when, but it shows my age, but many years ago. And I bought into a restaurant, and I started a restaurant with the business partner for 5 years. I then sold that, and I went into, and this was the biggest career jump, financial services. And financial services, you know, I'd been making food and serving customers for 5 years previous to that. And I was sitting in a room in an interview with a load of suits, and they were kind of, you know, looking at me going, yeah, you'll never get a job in this industry because, you know, what do you know about financial services? So that was the challenge at that point. And then that was about 15 years ago. So I've worked on and off in financial services and stuff like that since. And your career is a journey, and it's a long and winding journey, and it is there's a lot of ups and downs in it. And this picture is a bit misleading because a lot of people who are returning to work are seeking change. They know where they're going, but then a lot of people do not know where they're going, and they might have worked in a job that they were unhappy with in the corporate world. They might want to start a business. They might be itching to do something different. They might have always been interested in some kind of area, but they don't know how to realize it, and they don't know how to get started with it. And that's, to me, coaching people, it's one of the biggest barriers. They're overwhelmed with how to do it. And that was certainly my, I felt that over the years in my path. I think having a vision of what you want to do is very important. And I think that spending time to think and plan about your career is very important. And when someone asks me, oh, what a career development plan, we in Jobcare, we work a lot with CVs, we work with LinkedIn profiles, we worked with your presence and your message to recruiters, to interviewers, when you're networking to other people. And so it's almost like spending time to start and think about. Can you hear me? Okay.
Yeah, yeah, we can hear you.
Okay, grand. So spending time to plan it at the start. Who am I? Where do I want to get to? How realistic is this? And how do I get there? Okay. And I have certainly thought about those things when I was making the career, the two big career changes in my life. One from owning a restaurant, and then one from going into self-employment as a coach about 5 years ago as well. Who am I? What am I doing now? What have I done? And my motivation and my credentials. And this is where a lot of people, when I'm coaching them, they say, well, I want to get into a certain area, the tech sector or the banking sector or certain areas, but I've got nothing. I haven't worked in this area before, or I've no experience in this, or I've come from another country, so it's really, really difficult. So my credentials are important, and a lot of people forget what they've done. They forget their qualifications, and they say, well, you know, that's not, they're assuming that's not going to be the point. But everything is important if it's packaged up the right way. Where do I want to get to? And this is where your vision of what you want to do is very important. And if you don't have a plan, you're not going to get there, as there's a lot of quotations about this. So if you don't really think about what you like to be doing every day, what you're good at, and what you're because there's no, and I see this so clearly. People, it's like getting pigeonholed as an actor. You know the way actors say, oh, I keep getting put into these roles. People keep going back to recruitment consultants, no offense to them, but they keep saying, well, we've got your CV here and it looks like this job is the perfect job for you. And you say, no, that's not what I want to do. I want to change career. I want to pivot in my career. And this is one of the biggest challenges, to actually change your message, you know, and change your message to what, and everyone's is different, obviously. So, but what you want your message to be. and what your vision is of where you want to go, because that will start to form everything else behind it, you know. How realistic, and we talk in coaching about SMART goals: specific, measurable, achievable, realistic, and time bound, right? How realistic is it? And some clients are not realistic about, number one, the time it's going to take and the effort it's going to take to change careers and to do what needs to be done, because there could be re-education, there could be training, there could be taking a job that doesn't pay, there could be all sorts of things that you need, all sorts of hoops that you need to jump through to get this career change. So being realistic about what you're going to need to do and the time it's going to take. I have a client currently, and she said, well, I want this kind of job, and it's a complete career pivot. And she said, I'm hoping to be employed by middle of January, you know. So, and I kind of, well, you know, as nice as possible said, you know, that's not going to happen unless there's a miracle happening, because there is too many stepping stones. The other thing is stepping stones. What you have your vision of a particular type of job or particular type of things you want to do, and you say, this isn't going to happen for me straight away. So narrow down your time frame, say, what's the best first step that I can do here? What's the best thing that I can do? Do I get an interim job? Do I just get into the company? Because a lot of people say, I want to work in XYZ company, and anything will do, because once you're in and you get permanent, you're able to spread your wings a bit. So there's a lot of different ways of doing it, but branding yourself and creating your message and creating your vision, it's so important to spend time with that, you know, so important. I use this analogy of a stream flowing down river quite a lot with clients when they feel overwhelmed, or they feel like they've got barriers, and these are insurmountable barriers. And I remember distinctly when I bought my restaurant in the early 2000s, and there was a lot of legal problems, a lot of lease problems, a lot of problems going on. And my business partner said to me, this is never going to happen, right? And I remember saying to her, just think of it as we're in a boat, we're going down river, and the river is fastly flowing. It's going to happen. We just need to flow around the barriers or over the barriers. Whatever the barriers or the stones or anything like that in the way, this is going to happen. We are going to do it. So it's a kind of a never say die attitude. If it's really what you want to do, and you've had this focus, it's going to happen. And I remember distinctly being interviewed by financial services professionals, like sales directors, and they're all saying, you've no real experience in this. And I had done a number of interviews, so I was very focused, and I kind of said, well, you don't own this industry, and this was my attitude. I am going to work in this industry, so you either take me on or you don't. And that I started getting that belligerent attitude. And I'm not saying everyone should do that, but I got more confidence in that and saying, this is happening. I am on the stream. This is happening. So you either get on board with me and take me on, or else I'll go somewhere else. And that was started to be, my interview started to be successful at that stage. So it is very important to know what you want and then to project this, you know. Finally, and I'm a bit over time, sorry, Peter. Are you doing everything that is helping you? And by that, I mean, are you talking to the right people? Are you dealing with your CV properly? Are you dealing with your profile properly? Are you networking properly? Are you researching and upskilling in what you need? And this comes back to your plan. What do I need to do to get where I want to go? And this is the essence of coaching as well. Where is the gap? Fill in the gaps on the steps that you need to do. Are all your ducks in a row? Is your message clear? And your CV, and I do a lot of work with CVs with clients. It's more than a document. It's like an exercise in focus on what you are and what you have to offer and how you're presenting yourself, and how you're presenting your brand. So that's really all I have to say about it. It is a vast area, and it's in your mind. There's internal and external barriers, but think about having a clear picture of what it is that you're good at, you want to do, and then once that's there, it seems easy, because you just need to find out the steps after that, and what the steps are different for everyone, of course. So thank you very much.
Thanks a lot, Morgan. If you could stop sharing there, that'd be great. I was going to say that we'd share that presentation with everybody, but in a sense, we'd be just sharing a number of pictures. But thank you so much for setting the scene for us there today. So moving on, I'm now going to introduce you to our 4 panelists, and we're going to have a chat together. So perhaps you could bring them on the screen there, Peter, that'd be great. So we have Anne-Margaret Saunders, just arrived, and we should have Anne-Marie, if you can find Anne-Marie. And we have Owen, and sorry, did I say Owen? I said it again, Robbie, I'm sorry. We have Robbie, and we also have Laurence. So thank you very much for joining us this morning. Really great to have you. And I'm sure that some of the things that Morgan said were part of your journey as you considered your change in career. So first of all, just introduce you Anne-Margaret. Now, Anne-Margaret, you moved from being a full-time mum to working after about 10 years. Can you just briefly tell us about yourself?
Yeah, absolutely. Good morning, everybody. So my background is engineering, and then I suppose I moved into project management, and back in 2004, just because of family reasons, I needed to take a career break. And that ended up being, I don't know how it happened, but I found myself 10 years at home raising a family. And when my youngest guy was returning to school, I started thinking about getting back into the workplace. And I'm now working for Accenture, which is a management consulting company. And I've been with them now for 4 years. So I just, I can't believe it. If I had known what I knew 4 years ago, I probably would have been a lot calmer than I was at the time about restarting my career.
Thanks a lot, Anne-Margaret. So we'll be exploring your journey very shortly. And now to Robbie. How are you, Robbie?
How are you doing? Yeah, Robbie, not on today. You'll get us right one of the days, Peter. Don't worry about it. I take it as a compliment. But yeah, hi, morning, everybody. Thanks very much for taking the time, and thanks for having us on. So my name is Robbie O'Neill. I'm currently working at LinkedIn as a senior customer success manager, consulting with some of our largest customers on their talent acquisition strategy. But previously, I have worked as a plumber in Canada. I've worked as a digital sales representative in Dublin. I've worked as a medical sales rep in Dublin. I've gone from banking to bartending, so quite a few career jumps and hops. So hopefully there's something relevant for everyone that we can share across today. Lovely to meet everyone.
So now you know why I picked Robbie for this fireside chat. We're going to follow your journey, Robbie. Thank you so much. And now to Laurence. Hi, Laurence.
Hi, Peter. Thanks for the invite, and pleased to meet everyone. So myself, Laurence McKevitt is my name. I head up a commercial renewals team for EMEA within a company called Zendesk, who are a customer experience platform, providing customers with software, etc. So previously, I have been in the military for 12 years, where I served at home here in Ireland and served abroad on 4 occasions, mainly in the Middle East, Central and West Africa. Operated with teams both at home and abroad as well. And after that, after 12 years, coming off the back of leaving school, pushing 30, I decided for a career change. The career change consisted of studying. So I studied in leadership and management and done some cybersecurity as well. In business now, as we say, moved from one company to another. First, I was with an Irish company known as FCR Media, and we'll know them as the parent company of Golden Pages, as it was, who are an advertising brand. Moving on to Zendesk today, and worked with Peter pre-COVID, again presenting to a lot of people within Jobcare and people who attended Jobcare courses, and happy to be here today. So thanks very much, everyone.
Great to have you, Laurence. And finally, Anne-Marie Macken.
Thanks, Peter. Hello, everyone. My name is Anne-Marie Macken, and I'm the founder of Money Coaching Ireland. I left college and joined the bank for 2 years, Bank of Ireland. In my head, it was going to be for 2 years, and ended up staying there for 15 years. So I had a really enjoyable career there, but by the end, for various reasons, was glad to leave and took redundancy with the view that I would take a couple of months at home with my young kids and return to the workplace. But I didn't know what I wanted to do, and I felt a bit stuck and lost, and went on some Jobcare courses and eventually found my way. I retrained as a coach, and I set up Money Coaching Ireland, so to bring in those two worlds together to support people's financial well-being. So delighted to be here to talk to everyone today.
Thanks, Anne-Marie. And just to say to everybody, I'm really interested to know where you are in the career transition process, guys. So feel free to say on chat, where you are, what you're hoping to do, where you were before this, and let's hear your story. And as well, then towards the end of the session, we're going to ask you to post in some questions, which we put to our panel. You can say, I want to ask Anne-Marie, I'd like to ask Robbie something, whatever, or just ask the panel in general. So just back to one more question for each of you, if you wouldn't mind. I'm really interested in what was the motivational factor in you making the career change? So you told us a bit already. Is there anything you want to add there to that, Anne-Margaret?
I suppose for me, I hadn't intended to take a 10-year career break. The time just went very, very quickly, when you're at home and busy and running a household. But I suppose I was conscious I needed to restart my career. And so it had me thinking about all the different roles that I had done in the past and all the different skills I had done. And I suppose initially I was thinking I may have to go back and study because I'd had such a big break before, getting back into the workplace. But in fact, I came across, and they really are out there, is returner programs. So for anyone that is thinking of restarting their career from a break, an awful lot of organizations now are doing these programs. And I think that was what gave me the boost, and took me on my journey, rather than, initially I had thought I was going to have to study and I was going to have to gain new skills. So that kind of really helped me restart and realize that the skills that I had, even though they were from, 15, 20 years ago, were still very, very relevant. So that was kind of the path I took.
Thanks a lot, Anne-Marie. Anne-Margaret, woo! I'll get used to this after a while. Laurence, what really motivated you to make that very significant change? I suppose the one from the Defence Forces into tech and a couple of companies like that.
Yeah, absolutely, Peter. And I suppose the big thing for me is that, as I mentioned in my intro, coming off the back of leaving school and right into the army, you're a very different person at 17 as you are to 25, and then at 30 and so on. For that 12-year period, as I say, I joined 18 up till 30 years of age. The big thing for me, I suppose, was you've one dynamic to another, in that you have the military life, which is highly disciplined, completely, it's fast paced, you're always under the cosh, if you like, okay, for most part. It's not all about sitting around in a barrack, if you like, marching and playing with whatever you have, sports or whatever, and weapons training, etc. There's a lot more to the military. In terms of, I suppose, motivations for me, Peter, was, I suppose I was looking to have a work-life balance. Okay, I was at an age where I wanted to study as well. So the big thing was, the factor was around leadership and management. So I pursued courses in Dublin Business College, UCD as well, in leadership and management, just to take that kind of next step. And I suppose the big thing as well was just the new ways of learning opportunity, picking up on certain courses, stuff like that. But yeah, that was the motivators for me. Complete career change, completely different to the corporate world, but happy out and happy that I did it. Thanks.
So work-life balance was an important thing there. Robbie, yourself, big change.
Yeah, and I suppose the common theme for me is that I didn't have a background. I would kind of find jobs that would suit the skills that I had or the appetite that I had. And a lot of it in my early career would have been kind of financially motivated. Well, what can I get paid to do? Considering I dropped out of college, I don't have the degree. I didn't have the piece of paper that a lot of other people would go to when they go knocking on the door. So the big motivator for me was to open up opportunities to be able to travel, to be able to move. My wife is from Canada, so I wanted to be able to make sure that whatever I was setting myself up for, it was long term as opposed to a kind of short term remedy. So I went through a lot of kind of skills mapping for myself to just understand, well, what jobs are out there, what skills do they require or ask for, and then understanding what's a hard skill and what's a soft skill. So a hard skill might be something like programming, C++, Python. I say all these things because my clients reference them. I don't really know exactly what they are. But the soft skills in terms of communication, relationship building, being able to work within a team effectively, working towards goals and being able to understand what the business outcome is, as well as what the individual contributor outcome is going to be, and being able to kind of make my CV malleable to each different role that's there and be able to call out the specific gaps that I had was particularly helpful. But the main motivator for me was being able to move around with family while still having consistency within my career.
Brilliant. Thanks very much. And Anne-Marie, yourself, what was your main motivator?
I think in a word, it might have been burnout at the time. I just had to get out. I went back to the bank after having my second child and found it really tough. As my mother and mother-in-law were getting older, they weren't in a position to support us like they had previously. So I did struggle and took the opportunity, like I pushed to get the redundancy and got it, which was great because it gives you that bit of breathing space to figure out what to do next. And as I said, in my head, I felt I'll take a couple of months out and then return to the workplace. And I had in mind a corporate role away from banking. I was probably a bit allergic at the time. Now, looking back, I've realized, look, over the 15 years, 14 of those were fantastic, you know, and things got a bit hectic at the end. And in a way that was good because it pushed me to go and do something different. I would have continued on, I think, if I hadn't got to burnout stage. So sometimes burnout, you know, when you look back, it can turn out to be a good thing. And then I found coaching and absolutely fell in love with it. So decided to turn that into a business.
Thanks, Anne-Marie. Just looking at some of the people who talked to us in chat, we have someone who was a biomedical scientist, wants to go into project management, somebody in employment wanting to jump, applying for jobs, somebody wanting to make a huge career change from being a paleontologist, I think that's someone who looks at fossils, to anything else. Somebody who was a doctor wants to get into the wild world of corporate, somebody of financial services, someone who's made a lot of career jumps, somebody who doesn't want long hours, data scientist, so on. My goodness, we have so many people wanting to change careers. So this, I hope, is going to really work for you this morning. I'm going to pose a question to the whole panel, and feel free to take it up if you want to. And that is, can you pick out a particular things that were your biggest challenges or fears as you went about making this change? So what was your biggest challenge or biggest fear?
Yeah, I can come in on that, Peter, really quick. So I suppose coming from the military, again, as I mentioned, there is quite disciplined. So in the military, everything is yes or no, sir, 3 bags full, okay? Coming to the corporate world, it's a little bit different in that you have to be forward, you have to be challenging, and you have to, you have to be proactive as well. And not that you aren't in all of that in the military, but there is a rank structure where it's like speak when you're spoken to, especially when you're in recruit training on certain courses and so on and so forth. It's highly disciplined. Coming into the corporate world and mainly tech, there was definitely a huge change for me as I moved from military into working for an Irish company into the tech world, okay? So that'd be the big thing for me, was just trying to leverage, how best can I approach the corporate world. And of course, any courses I studied did help with that. Took on some courses, as I say, while I was transitioning for that 9 to 12 month period when I left the military, to get ready for Civvy Street, so to speak. So I took up courses and just networked a lot as well across LinkedIn and stuff like that. So the big thing was to understand the corporate world for me, for sure. Yeah.
Brilliant. I'm just thinking, Anne-Marie, for you, it was a big risk, a big change. What were the things that really were barriers for you?
The biggest thing was putting myself out there. So in Bank of Ireland, I didn't have, I had a job to do and I had portfolios to manage, but I didn't have to be on social media or putting my head above the parapet. So that was a huge barrier. And to overcome that, I worked with a coach and a mentor just to get my head around it and get comfortable with, look, if you are going to start your own business, you can't be invisible. And, ironically, that's the side of the business I really enjoy now. Now, it can be very time consuming, but it's funny, I had all these fears about it, but actually when you do it in a way that's authentic to you, it can be, really enjoyable. So that was definitely fear. And then obviously the financial side of things, not having that regular income is huge. And through one of the job care programs, I worked on that, saying, right, well, that's a barrier. How do I overcome that? And I was able, because I'd been probably like lost for so long, I ended up qualifying for the Back to Work Enterprise Allowance. I got National Childcare Scheme funding. So that took that barrier away in terms of, okay, I can, have time to build the income stream, because as Morgan said, if you're making a big change or trying to build something from scratch, it does take time, and you need to be able to stay the course.
There's a couple of people on the call who are saying they don't know what it is that they want to do or can do next, guys. How did you go about assessing your own capabilities, what you could possibly do? Or was it just, I go on to Jobs Ireland or Indeed and see, well, that sounds like a job that I might be able to do? Did you put a lot of time into thinking about what you yourself could bring?
I can maybe take that one if you like. I spent quite a lot of time doing this myself. I think the research is going to be so fundamental to understand like what jobs are out there, and what do they entail, what do they need from you, and then what do you need to bring, what will they give you, and what do they need uniquely from you as well. And being able to kind of understand where you've come from, and what you do. And I saw a couple of examples there of people saying that they're coming back to work after maybe looking after their kids, and there's a couple of people in the chat as well, and I don't know, Anne-Margaret mentioned it as well, and thinking about the transferability of the skills that you have, like there entails project management, there entails time management, there entails communication skills, all of these types of things. And we might negate them ourselves because we might just think straight away, well, this is just what I have. But these are key differentiators for employers when they look at people. So that research of understanding what a job needs from you, what you'll bring to it, and also what they'll need to bring to you. So doing a bit of a gap analysis once you've done your research on the types of roles that you would like to do, it's really fundamental, because you'll be able to go then with the story of, here's who I am, here's what I have, here's what I'll need for you, but here's what I'll bring into you on day one. And it's a lot better to be able to kind of tell that story, but it's really important as well to be able to look at the companies that you would like to work for and understand the types of culture that you would like to work within, the types of people that you would like to work with, and the types of things that, and this might be a little bit overarching as well, but for me, like my core values, I want to work in an organization where I know there is a difference being made to somebody or something. That's quite important to me as an individual. So being able to align my values with a company's values is really important. So the jobs research is great. The company research is just as important. And as well, if you come up with nothing, you might end up in a situation like Anne-Marie, where you turn around and go, well, I'm just going to go and do the damn thing myself. Have it done. So I hope that helps.
That's great. That's great advice, Robbie. Thank you.
And interesting, Peter, like if I think of what my biggest barrier was after being out of the workplace for 10 years, it was probably confidence. And although, I'm quite a confident kind of person and I'm an extrovert and I love speaking to people, I kind of realized that business confidence was gone. So I remember my first week back in the workplace, people used to say to me, you know, how is it? How are you getting on? And I was actually shocked that I could hit the ground running when I came back. And the only way I could describe to people was it's kind of like learning to ride a bike. So no matter what you've done in life and, you know, different jobs like, you know, Ravi and Laurence have had over the years, you continue to build on them and you kind of never forget. And then the other thing that I really realized when I went back, that I felt I went back stronger than I had left the workforce 10 years before. And that is, again, it's just Robbie mentioned it about different skills, and they aren't necessarily work skills. Like if you do volunteering, or even when you're at home running a household and dealing with kids, they're communication skills. And I suppose it's just maturity as well. But that really struck me, that not only, you know, did I kind of, you know, hit the ground running, but I felt stronger than I had before. And that really shocked me, you know.
Mm-hmm. That's very interesting. I think it's one thing convincing yourself that you can do it and you can make it, but it's another thing to convince the employer or the interviewer. How did you go about convincing the employer? Let's say you got your interview situation, or even when you were applying, what did you say about yourself? How did you present yourself? I know Morgan said he was sitting in front of some suits and you know, they were thinking, what have you got that makes you suitable for a role in financial services? So how did you guys convince the employer? How did you go about it?
I could jump in on that one if you like. So it's not particularly easy given the kind of internal battling that you might be doing with yourself, whether or not you can actually do it, and that self-belief that you might have. But being able to present a kind of clear and concise story around where you're coming from, for me, was the most valuable thing, to be able to kind of communicate to people, even within something like a cover letter. Here's what I'm doing. I know I am not your 100% candidate, but people don't tend to find 100% candidates, but I'm able to communicate exactly what I'll be bringing to it. And even the fact that I can be that analytical on myself shows a certain amount that my current employer looks for. And I saw one of the questions in the chat, like, how did I communicate, like the differences, and was I questioned on it? Yeah, absolutely. I was definitely questioned on why have I transferred across different industries. And I just had to be kind of thoughtful in terms of the answer, but I had a prepared answer for it. And those types of things always show up when you prepare for the types of challenges or the types of questions that you might receive around why are you transitioning now? Why are you changing? If you're bulletproof in terms of your answer and you're bought in on the answer yourself, that will feed through and that message will get across to the person. And it does take a little bit of time, right? I was 18 months trying to get into LinkedIn, and I was working a different contractor job while I was doing it. But my messaging never changed because I was so solid on my story, on the why. Why did I want to get into this role? What will I bring into this role? And that really was the kind of key differentiator that my then hiring manager, the person who brought me into LinkedIn, kind of called out, that the industry changes and the differences in the background made sure that I was a cultural addition rather than just a cultural fit. And the mold that they would have hired for, and they knew that I would bring in different perspectives and different skills into the team. So if it makes sense, to try and form that challenge as the opportunity for yourself is kind of where I was going with it, and that's how it resonated with the hiring panel that were there, because they could clearly see the appetite that I had. They could see that I was measured in terms of here's what I have and here's what I don't have. Here's what I need from you guys. And that was kind of the story that they were looking for within that particular interview. But I will say I applied, I think it was, I can't remember, apologies, but I think it might have been Morgan or Laurence that referenced, like, just to get in the door. I applied for a job and they asked me why I hadn't applied for a different job, the job that I'm currently in. I applied for a lower level job, and they said, why didn't you apply for the customer success manager role? I said, because I didn't scroll far enough. I just found a job that I was applicable for and I applied for it to kick the door in. And then they rescheduled it. So even just being upfront and honest with where you're at as well is a key thing to just keep in every part of it.
Anyone like to add anything to that?
No, I suppose, look, at a few people in the chat I know have spoke about the returner programs. In a way, I feel very fortunate that I had discovered that path, because I just think, again, I think one of my barriers to going back to the workplace was, how was I going to explain the last 10 years, And I really regretted that while I was off for those 10 years that I hadn't studied at night or hadn't done something amazing that I could tell an employer, but the reality was I was just so busy at home with the kids, and we had set ourselves up in a way that, my husband had a really full-on job, so I really was managing everything at home, and there just was I had 4 children, there was no time for that. So in a way, because I went the returner route, and the starting point was you had been out of work, suddenly that barrier went, and I didn't have to explain myself. So that, for me, broke down that barrier, because otherwise, and again, I think it's all about, you convince yourself nearly, this isn't possible. I can't do this. And it's amazing that I look back now and I'm like, I didn't have to spend, money to study. I was convinced I was going to have to invest in a number of years to do some kind of qualification or degree. And obviously there are years that I'm not earning money, and a big motivator to go back to work. Obviously there was a financial motivator there. But I would agree there with Robbie. I think it's just be honest with people. Like, I would have thought before in the interview, I would have had to nearly make up things that I was doing for the last 10 years to make me sound like, I'm someone that they need to, they should be hiring. But I think it's to be really honest and be authentic when you go into the interview, and do really think about the skills you have from previous employment or from your role in the household, or managing, like, say you've a sick relative, or these are all skills and life skills and maturity that you bring then back into the workplace.
I'll just add to that, Peter. Anne-Marie makes a really good point there in the 10-year gap. So the 12 years I was in the military myself, when I was leaving, I wasn't prepared for Civvy Street. And what I mean by that is I had a lot of courses done, but they were applicable to the military. I was a physical training instructor, I was weapons instructor, whatever it was, okay? And then when I left, it was kind of that culture shock. As I mentioned earlier, I took that 9 to 12 month break and studied music, believe it or not, just done a music production course and other things. So just to find my balance was, when I left the military, to Anne-Marie's point, like that, for Civilian Street, I wasn't qualified, apart from a leaving cert that I had from 12 years previous. And I suppose from the question itself, what it did give me was fearlessness, okay? So when I went into the job interviews for both FCR Media and my current role, in my current role, I was interviewed by a senior director and I believe a senior manager at the time. And the role I was going into in Zendesk was a brand new role. So when I came into that role, Peter and guests, in 2018, I was actually the first person in EMEA to take on that challenge. So I knew I was used to working in fast-paced environments. I knew that I was used to working deadlines, and I knew that I could work under pressure. So that was the big thing for me. So where I kind of doubted myself with the 10 years, 12 years of military experience and plenty of qualifications in a uniform, I had very little going to Civvy Street. But what it did give me was that fearlessness to go in, believe in myself, and as Anne-Marie and Robbie put it, to be honest and transparent.
Thanks a lot. We tend to advocate networking here in our Jobcare courses, and I'm interested to know to what extent you used your network or networking as you began to navigate this career change.
It was probably the first thing I did, Peter. So most of my career was abroad. So I worked, as I mentioned, I was an engineer and I worked in the oil and gas industry. And that's even interesting, thinking about transferable skills. Like my first role, I was working on an oil rig in the middle of the North Sea, and you're kind of thinking, where can I, what's relevant there about bringing it back to Ireland? But when I had worked for not long, because actually it probably was for a 3-year period in the Sustainable Energy Authority of Ireland, but I had 2 pregnancies during that period. So, you know, really, I hadn't been in that organization for very long. But the first thing I thought about doing when I made that decision to return to work was to go to, they host an event every year in the RDS called the Energy Show. And I was a bit mortified going because I hadn't seen and I hadn't really kept in touch with many of my colleagues. But I just thought I would go along to this event and see, you know, who was still working in the organization, and in a way just nearly to try and get my head back into the corporate world and the corporate language and the corporate conversation. But it was really interesting because I ended up meeting actually quite a lot of ex-employees. So they had left Sustainable Energy Authority of Ireland and were doing their own thing. And on the back of that, I got together with 2 guys that were in the middle of a startup and they needed a bit of help. And I ended up helping them, and I wasn't being paid. And so for a couple of months, I supported them. And I thought that that was really beneficial because it just increased that confidence again around business language and supporting them. But it was funny, after a couple of months, my husband was getting really frustrated because he was like, are they not paying you? You know, because obviously he could see the value that I was adding and the connections that I was helping them make through, I suppose, my own network when I had, you know, school network and gone to college. But yeah, like from my perspective, I just think, and that's probably great with LinkedIn nowadays. LinkedIn, you know, well, I wouldn't have been, I probably was there 4 or 5 years ago, but I wouldn't have had the confidence to go on it. But, you know, I just think get out there, talk to people, and every conversation, like even at the school gate, you just bump into people and you never know where that conversation is going to take you. And I think just be really open that you're trying to get back into the workplace, ask people for coffees, you know, reach out. Absolutely. I think for me, that was definitely my first leap into, you know, me returning.
I always try and use the analogy, and then I might maybe steal some of Anne-Marie's thunder, or this might resonate with you, Anne-Marie, but if you set up a business and you've got your products and you've got your website and got everything, and then you just wait for the phone to ring, you probably won't be a business for too long. If you go through the process of understanding the types of roles that you want, the types of companies that you want to work for, but you're the only person that knows about it, no one else can help you on that journey. Right. And so many companies have like referral programs that have employee advocacy programs that be trying to get people in the door. A little bit of research will help you pinpoint a couple of people, a couple of messages isn't going to do you any harm. Even, and not to just advocate for the LinkedIn side of things because I work at LinkedIn, but if you do have a network there, are you intentional with your profile in terms of communicating out to your network? Hi, my name is, and I am trying to do this. If you know of any introductions or are free for a coffee, would love to have a quick conversation. It's very few people that if they're in a position to help you would turn down that type of a message. And it's really intentional. It can be quite simple and thorough. You don't have to go through the 1,400 word posts to be putting out there to kind of lay your emotional scene across a social media platform. You just have to be a little bit intentional, but it does take a bit of a leap of faith, I'll be honest, because I'm not a huge proponent of social medias. I don't like to kind of post myself out there as well. But I found when I took that intentional step of even just indicating to my LinkedIn network that I was open to a new opportunity, that opened so many conversations for me. So that is that little extra step of once you've set your stall out, these are the types of jobs I want, these are the types of companies, go to the market, go out to your network and see. And even if it is conversations with your peers as opposed to posting something on social media, because I know there's different levels of comfortability with that type of thing as well, do as much as you can.
Anybody else? I go back to the question in case you've forgotten.
Networking. And I think it's so important. And if you think about it, if you're hiring somebody and somebody that you know and trust says, oh, I've been talking to her, she's a great candidate, or I've been talking to him, or, you know, there's social proof there, they're not taking a chance on you, you immediately elevate your chances of success hugely rather than somebody who's just applying speculatively and they don't know you from Adam. So it's so important, and it also shows that you're really, if you're out there having conversations with people who are doing the job, that you're interested in the field, in the industry. You want, you maybe share the values of the company. Yeah, it's just vital. If you're trying to get a new job, or if you have a business and you're trying to grow the business. Yeah.
Just a question in here from Brian. He just wants you to maybe enlarge a bit more about how you shaped your CV to show your capabilities for this new role, and maybe a little bit more about how you were convincing to the employer in the interviews. So if anyone wants to add a bit there about how they did that.
I can jump on that one if you like. So for me, my CV was rather sparse, to be perfectly honest, because I had a lot of experience doing a lot of different roles, but I was really struggling to kind of pinpoint where the common theme was. And that was kind of the most important thing for me in terms of shaping my CV, was to create that storytelling component of, well, why have I done these things? Helping fill in some of the gaps, because otherwise someone just sees, here's Robbie and he's gone from this to this to this to this, and there doesn't seem to be a direction. There doesn't seem to be any kind of thought process behind it. Whereas now, the thing that I'll pinpoint as one of the kind of key drivers for my career and where I go and what I do is I want to learn. I want to learn new things. I want to do new things. I want to be a part of things that are evolving. I want to bring in my ideas, and I want to do it alongside people that want to do the same. I want to be a part of a team that works towards a common goal, that works to and achieves that goal. That's a really important thing for me. I think it's one of the things that's been kind of the underlying for a lot of the different conversations around like engaging with people with your network and communicating your stories. Don't ever forget that you're going to go into a job, you're going to work with people. A lot of your interview process is going to be understanding, do I want to work with this person? Is this person going to work well within the team? So when I was able to kind of focus on how do I take my CV and not just look at it from a learning point of view or my degrees or what capabilities I have or what certificates I have. Obviously, there are roles where they're all extremely relevant, and there are going to be roles where you're going to need to have that certain piece of paper or that hard skill. But for me, doubling down on the soft skills that I had that were applicable to the types of roles, and then being really thoughtful about engaging with different people on the team. If I'm in an interview process, do you have anyone else that I can speak to on the team to get an understanding of the role or an understanding of the company? And that just kind of weaves you in to their network, and now you can start to hear different things, see different people. Now you've got maybe a couple of other advocates that were within there. So that was really kind of how I went about it.
Yeah, I can add to that as well. So I suppose shaping the CV was one thing, in that outside of the military, I probably was doing some voluntary work. So I knew that I had those people skills that I could add to that. And then with the military comes all these buzzwords like discipline and punctuality and all that kind of stuff. In terms of how I went over the interview, and to answer this quite quickly, because I know we're running out of time, is research. So I went on to, prior to walking by along the canal near Ranelagh, where our offices are based, I saw the offices, never heard of the company because they were more dealing with business to business. Took a quick photo on my phone, went home, researched for a full day. That was looking at YouTube to see what the product was all about. What could I take from the product, and how the product was being created. And I was kind of digging in a lot on YouTube, just with little short 2-3 minute videos, and researching the company on Glassdoor, which is a fantastic website, going in, finding out what the company is all about. What do the employees think? What is the leadership like? What is the company like as a rule? What are the values of the company? Okay, so that was a lot of the stuff I looked towards. And then I went to the website after a day or two of looking over this. They were a company for me that spoke the same language as me. And I just went through, and I think Robbie touched on it earlier, where he didn't get to a certain part of the job, jobs that were available. And I saw one that was, I think there was one in account management, i.e. sales, and then there was another in renewals and customer success, which Robbie's in today. And I just applied for all three because I knew that my skill set and what I had been doing in the company I was working for previously and post-military, and that I could bring something to that company as well. So that's just went in and believed myself and put it to them.
We have a question from Rachel for Anne-Margaret. Just tell us a bit about what the project management role is about.
Oh, well, I always think project management is, really it's common sense. It's about coming up with a plan and implementing that plan and, bringing a team. Generally, it's a multidisciplinary team together. So in a way, we're all doing project management in our lives. And I certainly did it in the home when you have, you've children that need to get from A to B, or you have a certain amount of money that needs to last from one end of the month to the other end of the month. But it's interesting. So I left college into the oil and gas company Shell, and they were the roles I ended up in more. It was a project management role. I think project management comes into everything, because now, even in my time in Sustainable Energy Ireland, I suppose that was probably still core project management. It was program management. You were still kind of managing something. But now I'm working in the consultancy area, and I'm actually in change management. And that's interesting. That's another part of project management, where you're thinking about the impact that your project is going to have on the people in the company. And I often kind of think, and I wouldn't have known this when I came into the company, that one of my strengths doing change management is that I had the break myself and had to come into an organization where I knew nothing and had to learn everything. And you kind of realize how simple the information has to be for you to be able to digest it and absorb it. But even in my role in change management, project management, I don't know if Anne-Marie, Robbie and Laurence would agree, but project management is key. I actually think, if you ever were to do a little bit of extra study or research, that really project management skills are such transferable skills. You probably have done them in your life, so really reflect back on even voluntary work you've done or work you've done at home or previous places you've worked. But they really are, I think, the core, and I don't know what the guys agree, but the core to a lot of roles, some of these kind of project management skills.
Thanks a lot. Anne-Marie, we haven't heard from you for a bit, but I know that, starting your own business poses particular challenges and risk. How did you handle that fear and that risk?
Well, I alluded to it earlier, I think, in terms of the social media piece. It was like, okay, this is a big barrier. How do I get over that? And it's to find out more about it, to see if I can explore what was making me uncomfortable about it, and, and get in touch with the reasons why you want to do this. And if you want to do this, this has to be a part of your business, social media, and to do it in a way that's authentic and real to you and doesn't feel false. So working with a coach, working with a mentor, if you identify and name the problem and then say, right, what solutions are out there? How can I overcome that? Like the money thing as well, what resources can I get? Is this doable? And if it's something that you really want to do, you will absolutely find a way to do it.
Just looking at the chat there, we're getting loads of people saying that was a really good point. That was a really good point, and thank you very much. We have more of those than we actually have questions. So I'm going to move on to my last question, and that is, what bit of advice, if you had one piece of advice to give to somebody who's contemplating career change or in the process of it, what would be your advice? So I'll hand over to, let's say, Anne-Margaret.
Just go for it, I genuinely believe there's a role for everybody. I think really think about your strengths and what you can contribute to whatever that role is that you have in your sights, and then just get out there, do a couple of interviews, have it in your head that they're going to be practice, or they're going to be, that mightn't be where you end up. But I'm just delighted I took the leap of faith, So yeah, I don't know, like, I just think get out there, keep talking to people, you know, and get that inner confidence from somewhere, and just do it, because you won't regret it.
Sometimes I think if I leave one of you to last, that everybody else is giving their same bit of advice. But Laurence, would you like to come in there?
Yeah, pretty same as that, Anne-Margaret. So the other thing is, I suppose, and I alluded to in my last point, it's just research. Knowledge is power. So when you're going into those interviews, that in order to believe in yourself, and have a good understanding of what that company does, what their mission is, you know, something as simple as the company mission, knowing exactly what the company is all about and the values. But the big thing is research, and with research in turn comes knowledge, and that's power. And again, Anne-Margaret touching it, go for it, do it. Thanks.
Thank you. And Anne-Marie?
I think it's don't take things personally. And that's, you know, something that I've learned more recently. Like, you know, I was with people that were going for interviews and getting knockbacks, and I didn't do too many interviews myself, but I didn't even get called for interviews for some of the things I applied for. But it's don't take it personally. Like, it's not personal. It's not a reflection on you or your worth. And if you start getting down and starting to doubt yourself because you didn't get a call back, like, that's not going to help you move forward. So I think that's so important. It's not personal, and having that, you know, appreciation for your own value and your own worth and what you can bring. And yes, take feedback, but again, it's not to take it personally, and not to be sort of going from one, oh, he told me to do this, she told me to do this, and, you know, well, what do you want, you know, and being able to discern what you're going to take on board, and what, you know, you're going to say, look, well, that's just their opinion. And the second piece is probably to say that, look, everything is temporary. And when you're in unemployment, you might be thinking this is never going to change, and it does. So like all the people that were on the course with me, you know, they've all moved into new things. And just to remind yourself, look, this is temporary. Sometimes it takes longer than you think, but it, you know, it will, your employment situation will change, and it's important to keep that energy up, because like nobody is going to hire you if you're sort of down in the dumps and doubting yourself, you know.
Thanks. And I'll leave the last word there to Robbie.
Anne-Marie stole my one. I think as well, alongside the resilience, and obviously just the different attitudes and that you bring into it in the research, like they'd be my top three as well, 100%. I think it's always really important to take stock of where you're at. So draw a line on today. This is where I'm at. This is what I'm doing. Take stock in a month's time. Take stock in 2 months' time. Have a look at where you are, what you're doing. And even when you get into that new role, have that little piece of paper that was there to say, that's where I've come from. This is where I am now. Those are huge moments that you can kind of take forward as well. I don't do it as regularly as I should. But whenever I do, I kind of look back and I think, well, this is where I'm at now. I've got so much to do. But what have I done in the last 6 months? Where was I when I outlined that plan on what I wanted to do? So that'd be my thing on top of the guys things. Take stock whenever you can. It's really important to kind of understand how you're progressing.
Thanks very much, Robbie. And thanks very much to each of you, Anne-Margaret, Anne-Marie and Laurence, for fantastic input today. And if the comments on the chat are anything to go by, we think that we have hit the spot, certainly for many people on this call today. So thank you so much. Thanks, guys, for showing up. I hope that you all found this a benefit. We will be running more courses in the new year. And if you are interested, keep in touch with us. I think many of you have actually registered with us, but we'll be offering some free opportunities for you to meet other people who are unemployed, to meet people who are in work, and to gain confidence, experience, help you with your CV, help you with your networking, help you with your interviews. And until then,